I'm going to introduce our first prepared speaker of the day. And his name is Mark Kilroy. Mark Kilroy is continuing on the effective coaching path with his level 1 evaluation and feedback, number 2 pathway speech, where he has taken feedback received to improve his presentation. Mark dreads meetings that feel like they go on forever. He has some ideas and suggestions for facilitating a productive and effective meeting on any topic. Please welcome Mark Kilroy with his presentation titled Effective Agendas for a Productive Meeting. Mark Kilroy.
By show of hands, how many of you have been in a meeting that has gone on and on and on and just seemed like a waste of time? I see many people raising their hands. And it's right. We spend an inordinate amount of time in meetings, whether it's Toastmasters meetings, civic meetings, business meetings, online, within Zoom, on a phone call. A lot of time is wasted. And today, I'm going to show you some techniques and share with you some techniques that will help you to form meetings and manage meetings and plan meetings that won't waste time. The first steps you need to do when planning a meeting is come up with a purpose and state a purpose statement. And how you would do that is you need to write that statement for the meeting. Like today's meeting, where my presentation might go something like, my purpose for this presentation I'm doing is teach people how to host effective meetings online or in person that's not going to waste time. That would be an effective purpose statement. And then once I have that purpose statement, I can decide what kind of meeting I'm going to need. Is it going to be an information gathering meeting? Is it going to be a meeting where we all get together to learn something, like our Toastmasters meeting? Is it going to be a meeting where I'm going to be collecting requirements or gathering information? So you also need to know that type of meeting. For an example, when I started out my career, I had one of my first meetings I did not have a very well planned out meeting, and it was a disastrous meeting. And I sat down to talk to my mentor at that time, and my mentor said, Mark, if you're going to have an effective meeting, you need to have a purpose statement. And in that purpose statement, you must put what your purpose of that meeting is, so you can have control of that meeting and create an agenda, figure out who your participants are, and pick a good location and inform those participants ahead of time. I learned from that mentor how to manage meetings and create a purpose statement and have more effective meetings. One of the second things you need to learn, I'm going to share my screen, is selecting the right participants. So once you have your purpose statement, you can go and determine what participants are needed for that particular meeting. And you got to ask yourself, when you're looking at a participant, is that person going to help me with my purpose? And decide that. Another way you can do it is ask for help. When I was at WellCare, I had a very large project, and I had to plan out an all-day meeting with many different business sections of the business departments. So I went ahead and I met with the manager of those particular business departments, and I let them know what the purpose, and I said to them, who do I need from your department to be in this meeting so that we can get the purpose done? And then they were able to tell me who was needed. I invited that person, and those people that were, the managers said needed to be invited, and we were able to get all the information done. We have all the information from that meeting that was needed. Next up is, once you have your participants, is selecting a location. Now, you may need a location depending on the number of people. If you have a few people, you may only need an office. If you have several people, you may need a large room, a large conference room to host that meeting. Today, because of COVID-19, we all are on WebEx or Zoom, so that would be your meeting location. Then after you're selecting the location, you need to inform your participants. And you need to inform the participants as soon as possible. So, and depending on the meeting, you're gonna wanna give them anywhere from several days to weeks and possibly months. So if you have an all-day meeting, you may have to give someone a month's notice in order to get them on the schedule so that they can have time during that to prepare for the meeting and also get on their schedule, especially if it's an all-day meeting and they're needed for all day. You wanna make sure that you go far enough out, like a month, to get on their schedules. And if you wanted to do a meeting that had to be less than 24 hours, the only meeting that you would give notice that's less than 24 hours is where you are giving information to the participants. As an example, I was at a large corporation and our senior VP had a meeting in person that they only gave 15 minutes notice because they had something important to tell us. And the important thing they needed to tell us is that a senior manager was let go that day. And they wanted to get ahead of any kind of rumors to let everybody know that this person was let go. It was a single decision based on that person's situation that didn't affect anybody else. So he wanted to get ahead of that. And that is one reason where you would have an impromptu or a fast meeting of informing the participants. Next up is developing agenda. So as I mentioned earlier, I learned from one of my first meetings where it was disastrous for my mentor was that you needed to develop a good agenda. And what my mentor told me is about the agendas, he said, Mark, you need to develop an agenda that goes along with your purpose statement. You must take the agenda and plan out your meeting with the agenda items with time of each item, just like you do in a Toastmasters meeting. So John has 5 minutes to do his presentation and Jill has 3 minutes to do her presentation. And you must make sure that all the agenda items match with your purpose. And if anybody goes off on a tangent, you must rein them back in and say, if that is something that needs to be discussed, we'll do that on another meeting, but we need to stay within our agenda. And I learned from that once you have an agenda and you keep within the agenda, you can have much more effective meetings. And some of the things that the agenda should have is the date, time, and place, the participants that are part of the meeting, a list of items, as I said, and those list of items should correspond with your purpose and in the order that's going to help you accomplish your purpose for the meeting. Recap of any previous meetings. So if you had previous meetings with the same group, you may want to recap those meetings, or in some organizations, they approve the meeting minutes from previous minutes. And then any kind of action items from the previous minutes. So if Joe had an action item to finish XYZ, you would want to get an update from Joe on how XYZ is going. And then after the meeting is over, the facilitator should have meeting minutes from that meeting that discuss what happened in the meeting with any kind of action items and follow-up items and any decisions that were made. And the meeting minutes should include the date, time, and place. The participants all participants that were invited, whether they showed up or not, because even if people were missing, didn't show up in the meetings, you will still want to send them the meeting minutes so that they know what was happening in the meeting and then kind of recap with the summary of what happened, any kind of decisions, and then any kind of follow-up action items. So if Sam was going to follow up on project 1, 2, 3, you want to put follow-up with Sam on project 1, 2, 3, and also put a due date for Sam, say July 25th. The follow-up by him would be a due date for that. And in conclusion, you need to state the purpose of whatever kind of meeting that you're having. And then once you have your purpose for that meeting, you then can go on and select your participants. And remember, be very careful in selecting the participants and always ask, those participants going to help you with the purpose of your meeting, and then selecting a location, whether it be a number based on the number of people and the size of the meeting hall or location, and it should be a convenient location also. Informing participants, so as I said, most time you want to give anywhere from 2 weeks to a month notice for informing the participants, then developing that agenda, making sure the agenda corresponds with your purpose, and then at the end of the meetings, following up your meeting with meeting minutes that recap and summarize the meeting and also have action items and any decisions that were made. I'd now like to return control to our Toastmaster.